welcome into the podcast. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to give a quick update. Had a little pre-trial hearing yesterday.
That's a big deal. It's the kickoff.
It is kind of the kickoff, yeah.
Being a launch guy, I like it when things launch.
Yeah, so figured it'd be a good time to talk about where it's going, why.
This is a big deal.
All that stuff. So I appreciate you coming in and hanging
Absolutely.
out again.
Yeah,
as usual.
I'm Drew. I'm a tech entrepreneur starting the company called PriceSlide. It's a sales platform, and Ian and I have connected. He is like my beta test. Anytime we have something new with PriceSlide, I'm like, hey Ian, do you think we can try it on this? And he's been a great friend of the business, great friend in general, and absolutely respect the mission and what he's gone through. And so when he told me about the pre-trial hearing, I'm like, man, we've got to have a discussion about this. Because I don't think people get how significant this is. I think even for me, who knows so much about this, I thought this was still maybe connected to defending yourself from what was going on. And that has nothing to do with this at all. So anyway, so for me, my biggest question yesterday when you started talking about the pre-trial hearing and the setup, because when's the trial again?
So we have to have all of our briefing in now by January 30th.
Because now you're suing or you're on the offensive.
Right.
You're not on the defensive.
Correct.
So I think that's point one. So unpack for me first, what will happen when you win? Because if you're on the offensive, it means you think you're going to win and your attorney thinks you're going to win.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack, but the easiest way to put it is we're removing the power that was given to a local health officer and a local health director. Before, it was the state health director that we were challenging because the emergency orders were issued under 2253, which we always talk about.
Yeah.
And a couple of other ones, but the main one we went after was 2253.
Because that's how they came after you.
That's how they came after me.
Correct.
That's how they limited people in your home during Thanksgiving. I mean, all the crazy things that we're still kind of reminding people about, the curfews and all of that stuff. Mask requirements, even the vaccine requirements and those things. I mean, all of them were all predicated on a health law passed in 1978.
Right.
And it hasn't been changed until now. And it really hasn't been challenged until now.
So that one, you won that. And I would say we won that, right? Because a lot of the people who are watching have been a part of the Risk It for the Brisket mission from the very beginning when you stayed open, right?
Yeah.
And so we won that lawsuit, which then did what with the health department?
So it removed, and we is the greatest term to use too, on top of what you said, T&V Associates, which we've talked about their case before and mentioned before, they're still on the path to the Michigan Supreme Court. And they've got a case before Michigan Supreme Court that affirms our win with Judge Hunter.
Right.
And that's a published ruling already. So
this would lock this ironclad.
This will lock it in at the state level. Now we're going after the local health director and the local health officer's power.
Okay, so stop there because this is where I think it's easy to get lost. So it feels like the local is not as big of a deal, but actually it's the opposite. The local is a bigger deal. And explain to me, it was almost like an Easter egg you guys found.
Yeah.
So what did you find in the lawsuit or in the first kind of set where you're being defensive and now you're having to defend yourself against the world? It was Iron Pig versus everyone, right?
Yep.
And you win, but it uncovered something. So explain what it uncovered on the local level.
So ultimately what we found, and again, all of these statutes suffer from the same fatal flaw that 2253 does.
Right.
Basically, the guardrails aren't enumerated enough, not very specific enough.
Okay.
Most of these statutes have the words reasonable in them. So for example, a health officer, not even the health director, a health officer who everybody should know is an unelected position.
Yep.
Officers, directors, they're hired by the health department or the health department board.
Yep.
In our case, what we found is the health officers have an enormous amount of power.
Wow.
So there's been a lot of controversy coming out of the state of New York where Governor Kathy Hochul, I think is how you pronounce her name, the upper courts affirmed a law that allows the state police to come into your home and remove you for a number of reasons, but it's most specifically around a communicable disease. So with no due process whatsoever,
You can just be taken.
they can come in
Put you in
and
a little
remove
tent.
you.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody calls up on that anonymous tip line that we FOIA'd and have got, was
Nothing.
denied, by the way. Somebody can anonymously tip and say, I think that Drew has COVID-24 or
Yeah.
whatever. I shouldn't make jokes, but we have to, right?
We digress.
Um,
You have to laugh about things.
that's kind of what we uncovered is the ambiguous language in these five statutes.
Okay, so these 5 statutes are the ones that are now local. That you went through something, you were able to win against a state statute,
Yep.
but now all of a sudden it uncovered these local ones that weren't needed to be used during COVID, but now they're in the chamber, so to
Now,
speak.
let me
of their
interrupt
gun.
you really quick
Uh-huh.
because a lot of times I get accused of, and I'm okay with this, I'm accused of, trying to keep this going, or well, why are you
Yeah.
continuing to do this?
Yeah.
And I always point out, anybody that has read Judge Hunter's brief, he says that there are other statutes that suffer from this same fatal flaw that 2253 does. And he even goes on to kind of say, listen, the word epidemic is not good enough. We've talked about this before. There are a lot of epidemics out there, and I think the CDC right now says the number one epidemic is loneliness. So imagine a health officer locally says, Drew is
Depressed.
He's depressed.
Mhm.
He's a menace to society because he's lonely and he's depressed. So I'm going to mandate that Drew has to have a buddy with him 22 hours of the day,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
That these health laws can enable that.
Yeah.
Not a governor, not a state health director, not even a health director at the local county level, a health officer. As long as he or she reasonably believes
Yeah.
a person harbors an infection.
So that
Or a place.
that brings me to my next. Give me another example. So for everybody listening, because this was important to me as I really was getting my brain around this. How many statutes locally are you going after right now?
5.
5. Okay, these 5 statutes give a disproportionate amount of power to a local health officer. Give me another example of one and how in reality that could play out so people understand what you're fighting against, right? Because I do think people see, oh, Ian's in court again.
Right.
What is this, like some ploy to bring business to your restaurant, Ian? Right. So, but that's how people
if
think.
I were such a marketing genius, I mean, we've received millions of dollars of marketing from this.
Yeah.
So it's certainly not that. And I can definitely tell you, lawyers aren't free.
So talk to me then, because this goes back to the mission component of this. And this was something that was uncovered to me that I was like, oh my gosh, I can stand behind this, because missionally, all of a sudden, we never as citizens get the opportunity to invoke change unless we go
Right.
into politics, so we believe. But this is actually better. Like, no politician could be doing what you're doing right now.
Well, so there's a couple of forms of redress with grievances like this. One is a long play, which is to remove your elected representatives in favor of representatives that can amend these laws
Sure.
or change them or eradicate them, remove them from the
Right.
Constitution, whatever. So that happened with the Emergency Powers of the Governor Act.
Yes. Yeah.
So Supreme Court in October 2020 ruled that unconstitutional. Then the following year, or 2022, I actually think it was still 21. Legislature removed that from the Constitution, so it can never even be brought
back in there.
again.
Got it.
Ultimately, this is the other. So we have 3 separate but equal branches, right? The executive branch, everybody knows what they do. Everybody should know what all of these branches do.
Sure.
But in lieu of getting representatives in there and trying to get the message across, listen, I spent the better part of 3 years trying to get favorable representatives to do something, including my own representative,
Yeah.
who was persona non grata from January all the way till
Yep.
now has done absolutely nothing. So
Wow.
what does that leave us?
Right.
The voters,
What option
the
do you have?
taxpayers. What does that leave us? That leaves us with the judicial branch.
Exactly.
That's why there's administrative procedures, there are avenues. We had to get beat down in administrative court before we could get to the real question at hand. Because we were saying all of these are unconstitutional, but we have to get beat down before we can go to court and ask these questions. So now we're preempting any abuse of these 5 statutes based on our win, based on this Michigan
Correct.
Supreme Court.
It opened up a whole lane
What I
for
want
you to
see,
write that's wrong.
I want to see Judge Hunter rule similarly as he did in our case,
To these.
right? Unconstitutional because they're a non-delegation violation.
Non-delegation violation. Define that real quick for me if I'm a 5th grader.
So that simply means that one branch, one of those separate but equal branches, was either given
Yep.
or is usurping, taking power
That's
from
not
the
theirs.
other. And in 225, in these cases, in 1978, the legislature, probably well-intended, passed these laws that are extremely ambiguous. Now, when EPGA was overturned and the governor and the health director and AG Nessel had to find an alternative way,
They went to the local. They
they
went to the health
were
department.
actually already using
Got it.
2253 from March. They simply
Wow.
changed the language. So they copied the executive order language over to 2253, 2255, and a couple of other ones.
Wow.
And they all have the same very, very ambiguous language.
And they knew
if
exactly.
the health director reasonably believes, what does that mean?
Yeah.
We need metrics behind that. When you're on the freeway,
100%.
it's a posted 75 speed limit up here up north.
It's not a suggested.
The Michigan State Police don't get to just change that arbitrarily, right? That's set by the legislature.
Right.
This is the same thing. The legislature set basically a blank speed limit. They actually put up reasonable speed. Right? That's kind of the best analogy that you can use is the legislature came out, they passed a law and said, just use a reasonable speed on the freeway.
Yeah.
That's
And if one police officer thinks you're not going a reasonable speed, they can determine that that's not reasonable and pull you over for it and write you a ticket if they would so choose.
right. So imagine that my ex-wife is now a police officer and has a grudge against me or something like
Yes.
that. This
That's
is
real.
what's it happened. Marlena was put in jail for keeping her. She had a complaint filed, an anonymous complaint. Numerous anonymous complaints have been filed against us. Again, I cannot get that information via FOIA. I will. But this is what we're trying to do, is we're challenging these statutes in a way that they are either stricken from the Constitution, as did Judge Hunter with 2253, severed, I think it was the language that he used. That's what we're seeking here, is to have these removed. And then if the legislature decides that, and listen, some of these are probably pretty important laws, right? To be able to identify an infectious disease.
Sure.
But what has to happen is the due process.
Yep.
Some of these statutes say an order is issued, but in that order, it says that Drew is required. You can redress, you can actually go to probate court, but guess what happens in the meantime? You are removed from your home or your business is closed down because they believe that Iron Pig or wherever is harboring an infectious disease. And with no due process, we're going to come in, we're going to shut you down, we're going to chain your doors, and or we're going to take and we're going to quarantine you based on our procedures. You don't get any say in
Similar
any
to like in Australia, where you saw people literally getting taken and put into like quarantine
100%.
camps.
100%.
And that can happen right now under what we have.
It could
locally.
happen. It could absolutely happen right now. What is preventing that from happening that didn't necessarily prevent it from happening with the state health director is the disconnection,
I see.
right? This is why local elections are so important,
see.
right? Everybody gets so up in arms about the presidential elections. It's these local elections, your judges especially.
Wow.
Your judges especially. This is what we're looking to have done is have these things removed and a process started where they can either be removed with better language or siphon this down to where there is actual actionable, measurable data to go on.
That seems very logical. Why is this important for every Michigander right now? Because obviously we say local. The local health department services how many counties? 4?
I think we do 4.
Okay. Why is this important for every Michigander? Why is this somebody down in Detroit that's watching this that's like, oh man, I'm not up there. But it's probably the same laws down there. Why is that important?
State statutes that enable the local health departments. So I forget how many health departments we have in Michigan, but every health department has access to these statutes.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're in Gaylord, Michigan, or if you're in Sault Ste. Marie, or if you're in Macomb County, any local health officer, not even a director, a health officer,
can make that decision.
It's crazy. But again,
they have the authority.
The reason why the majority of these weren't employed during the pandemic was because of that local connection.
I see.
Right? That's your neighbor that you're going to have to quarantine, or that you're going to have to serve that order saying that you're required to quarantine or required to do whatever.
Right.
That is why it's so important.
Yep.
When we win here, it only affects our health department.
Right.
We've done business in many, many, many counties. And that's all that is required to bring a declaratory action. That's what we're doing it's a declaratory action. We're not suing for money damages. None of that. It's not about the money. So anybody that thinks that we're doing this just for the money, they're wrong.
Right.
That's what T&V Associates did, the catering company. They didn't sue for money damages. They wanted a declaratory action. They simply wanted to judge, to declare this unconstitutional.
Yep.
And that's what we're seeking here.
I love it. So this is Risk It for the Brisket. I mean, this is a culmination. And I think that's what I wanted everybody who's been a part of this to really understand clearly. You first were being defensive. That uncovered where I'm going to call an Easter egg, right? It's that the lights all come on. You're like, whoa, time out. This is all over the place. And it's right in our local, it's a state statute that our local health department can use. We need to get rid of that, because if you don't get rid of it, no one will.
Yep.
Right? It'll just stay there in perpetuity. And then 15, 20, 30 years down the line, or next year, whenever the next thing happens, they can dip into that playbook. They can load that bullet in their chamber and they can use it.
So Risk It for the Brisket from the beginning, right? And you know this as well as anybody. I mean, you helped us design that. Awesome. I am wearing one today. I'm surprised I don't have it tattooed on my ass at this point. But that was, so many people were, well, you're risking COVID to have brisket, or you're risking COVID, or you're no, and no. We were risking our livelihood. My wife and I are not rich people. This is our family. This is our business. This is our livelihood.
You're hustling.
This is what we were risking for brisket.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even in that hashtag, the risk is up front, but the payoff is at the end.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. We risked everything. Bankruptcy. I mean, people still are attacking me online. It's so silly. 3 years later, they still cannot get over it. And I'm okay with that. You know why? That's their freedom of speech, baby.
That's right.
I'm fine with that. That's also
cool.
a free market economy.
Absolutely.
Those people probably will never come here. I wish they would. I'd have a conversation with, because I actually want to understand a little bit of that. But I'm getting off track here. The risk was up front. The payoff with the brisket is at the end, baby.
Yeah.
And in the times that we live in, where what we call the fourth branch of government, that administrative state, the EPA, the Liquor Commission, Department of Civil Rights, which we're going to be talking more and more about here in the coming weeks. All of these agencies sit under the executive branch.
Right.
In this document contains an argument called the vesting clauses argument. It gets so simple. That non-delegation thing that I mentioned to you earlier, that says, basically, you cannot exercise the rights of another branch.
You can't.
Right? Non-delegation implies that there are some times that is allowable. right? In the non-delegation doctrine, it does say that there are times that the
There's
executive
exceptions.
branch can define a little bit further
Right.
what a law means. What we have actually uncovered, the payoff, is in the Michigan Constitution. There are vesting clauses. There is absolutely no delegation allowed whatsoever.
Wow.
So non-delegation doesn't even exist,
Holy smokes.
which is tough because that's what we won on.
Yes.
That was the argument made, was that it was a non-delegation violation. But we're going one step further in this vesting clause argument in here, saying that there, imagine a kind of a fence between each one, a chain link fence.
Yeah.
And some things are kind of allowed to pass through from the legislative branch to the executive branch. Example, emergency powers of the governor, all these other statutes, right?
Yeah.
Our argument now, simply citing Michigan's Constitution, Articles 3, 4, 5, and 6, specifically state that they are vested. There is no language that allows a divestiture whatsoever of any of those powers in each branch. So that chain link fence now becomes a brick
cement wall.
Absolutely. That is the payoff.
That
is the brisket at the end. That is the sweetness at the end. So you're seeing it at the Michigan at the U.S. Supreme Court. They are slapping down these executive branch agencies.
Yeah.
Right? Student loan, slap down.
Yep.
EPA, slap down. Mayorkas, a couple months ago with border stuff, slap down. They are going after these administrative agencies that have so much lawmaking power and prosecution power.
Right.
They have their own set of judges.
Yeah.
It's insane. And those people are appointed. That's another problem.
And we're going to wrap this up. But to me, like, hearing your passion about this and your knowledge base about this, like, the depth of what you've studied and the depth of what you've gone through makes you very uniquely positioned for what you're doing right now. And so I think as I hear this, one, it gets me more fired up to have been a part and to be a part of Risk It for the Brisket. It also kind of defines for me what Risk It for the Brisket is all about. We use a term called "it's a fight for, not against."
Yeah.
And what's really cool is that was a term that was literally made up. I remember sitting in the office with you because I was hearing your passion for this, and it was this aha moment. That was like, wait,
it was. Yeah.
Ian's not actually this really angry man who is just trying to cause a riot right now.
Right.
He actually has a point.
And there definitely is that caricature out there.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you bring it on, but put that aside. The point is this, though. When somebody who all of a sudden realizes something's wrong, and it's so easily obvious to them, and it's like no one else gets it, there comes this almost this missional component to it that says, well, no, then I'm going to dig my heels in even more because I know I'm right.
Yeah.
And if I'm right and I don't do anything, then there is going to be literally a line of people forever that just get steamrolled by this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have it's kind of that idea of like, for such a time as this, right? And you didn't choose it. It chose you. Okay. And so, one, applaud for the effort and what you're doing. That's not why we came on this podcast, but it's something that I get excited about because I know everybody who's now stuck with this discussion to this point, and you've watched all, 20 some minutes of this, are going, oh my gosh, I want to be passionate too like that. I want to actually feel like I can make change too. And I think that's what we are inviting people into when we say become a part of Risk It for the Brisket. Mm-hmm. When you see that logo and when you see, oh, I bought a T-shirt or I ate at the Iron Pig and got my, got my picture next to the shutdown license, that type of thing. You're actually engaging with Ian and with this mission that's not just some like fluffy thing that we're doing something, or we're making a stand, or we're gonna be warrior, like woke warriors here. But there's literally laws that are being changed forever in Michigan's history to make it a fair and equitable place to do business and to live, that would not have been done in any other way. To me, I'm like, sign me up. Give me the t-shirt. I want to be a part of this thing, man.
The only way that we are still here, we're still fighting, that I'm able to even talk about any of this is because of this.
It is.
Because of people that listen to two silly dudes that come in here to have barbecue. And I don't pretend to think that my barbecue is the ultimate best ever. Of course, I think it's wonderful. It's delicious. Is there better barbecue out there? I'm sure there probably is. Is there better barbecue sauces out there? I'm sure that there probably is. But this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is what we represent.
Yeah.
And this is our brand. I never once wanted to be the front man for my barbecue joint. Right. I have other ventures going on, and I never wanted it to be about me. And for one, I started this business with a partner. He no longer is as passionate as he was about this, unfortunately. So here I am, here we are, because of those people that bought gift cards, showed up to festivals, come in here in Novembers and Decembers and Januaries and Februarys.
Travel from literally miles away to come to.
Hours away. People taking pictures with the license suspension poster out front, writing on the sign, F you, Whitmer. It's been a crazy ride, if I can call it that, which would imply maybe that I willingly jumped on that, and I suppose I maybe did, but never did I think that it would be to this point. We have the impact that it has, and the potential of what we've uncovered to have an impact really long lasting.
It's a legacy thing.
And I
risk it for brisket is a legacy
with
play.
That word. You've said it to me before, and I can't say that.
Sure.
I just it to me, I'm not stepped away from it enough. The mission was to keep the business open. Was to keep money in their pockets during Christmas.
Which was noble and valid, and you were pure of heart in that. I know you were. Or I wouldn't have been a part of it in the background. But this next step is also, because think about it. Now you're taking that same passion to do the right thing, and you're going forward with that on something else that was uncovered to you.
There's everybody's probably seen the movie with Nicolas Cage, the one where he steals the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
And he
National
says
Treasure,
National
right?
Treasure.
National Treasure.
And there's a quick part in that movie where he's reading where his favorite line in the Declaration of Independence. And in short, it says something about, when you see things that are wrong, it's basically your duty to throw off such government. And I've seen that movie a million times. And my attorney and I were talking a couple months ago, and he sends me this short clip of it. And I was like, man, I introduced him to another case, and he wasn't going to take the case. And he got reading about how this gal was just getting railroaded. And it bothered him so much, kind of like the school mask mandates that I got him into in the early parts of January 2021, which has had amazing outcomes, and they're going to the Michigan Supreme Court as well. But it's just that in and of itself. I'm not an attorney. I never thought I would be questioning the Constitution of Michigan or otherwise, but here we are. And again, because people bought T-shirts.
Well, you can't
showed up to a friggin' rally in the freezing ass cold in January of 2021 against the law.
I know.
That was an
They were
incredible-
there.
that
The
was an
state
in-
police were there.
The state police were there. How many pastors were there?
It was incredible.
Dude, you gave Risk It for the Brisket gave voice to a group of people that said, this isn't right, but I don't have a way
Right.
to actually vocalize that.
Right.
What this lawsuit is now preemptively saying these aren't right either.
Yep.
And if you don't do anything about it, then just like in the movie National Treasure, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And this whole cycle is going to be repeated all over again. We think things advance. Nothing advances. Nothing advances unless people push it forward.
Yep.
You think of technology. I think Elon Musk had the quote. He said, well, why haven't we been to the moon more? Why haven't we been to this? He says, well, because if not advancing, technology regresses, right? So if you don't do this now, it's gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
Until the next time we have a go around of it, and there will be a next time, right? And that's not doomsday stuff. That's life.
Right.
We live in a broken world. We live in a world where things are going to go wrong. And there's also incredible beauty, right? We live in a vast dichotomy. And so what you want to do is take the beauty and take the right and keep pushing it forward. Great job. This has been tons of fun. Thanks for letting me kind of actually interview you a little bit. But I felt like when I was listening to you yesterday and I was all excited to hear how the pretrial went, I was like, well, explain it to me. Even though you've explained it to me 1,000 times, it's hard for me to get my head around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the takeaway that I'm hoping that everybody takes away from this is when you're a part of Risk It for the Brisket, right now, what that means is there is 5 unjust local laws, not just local for us, but local for everybody in the state.
Right.
And because of the win you had prior to this, so because of what we did prior, we now can take down these 5 laws.
Yep.
And it's incredibly important we do, because if we don't, the same cycle just happens over and over again. Not only can it set a precedence for Michigan, but it also can then trickle down to other states as well that look at this. So if you want to be a part of that, right? This isn't just Ian and he's just wanting to cause a ruckus so he can sell more barbecue, okay? This is actually like, all of a sudden, like the uncovering happened, like, oh my gosh, no one else is going to be able to do this,
Right.
right? For such a time. That's what it means to be a part of Risk It for the Brisket. Anyway, there's my end, because I wanted to define what it means to be a part of Risk It for the Brisket. That's what I was passionate about, because I think other people want to join this as well.
I appreciate you as always,
Yep.
your insight, your background,
Of course.
everything. Drew's been a great partner through this whole thing on everything, a great sounding board for my stupid ideas. And I appreciate you as always, as a business partner, and as a good friend, truly.
Yep.
And I want to thank all of you guys for tuning in,
100%.
listening, buying. Right now we do have a deal going on
Let's do
for
it.
barbecue sauce, buy 4. Get the 5th one for free.
Nice.
We're shipping them out crazy right now.
It's good barbecue sauce too.
And
by
you
the
can
way,
get it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I had my kids eat it.
Freedom sauce, as we kind of jokingly call it. And maybe we'll actually just brand it freedom sauce one of these days. I don't know. It sounds a little
It's a good
hokey
idea.
to me, but I don't care.
Depends
But
what
again,
sells more.
ironpigsmoke.com, ironpigmerch.com, 20% off everything on the website right now up until Christmas. Thank you, Drew, for tuning in.
100%.
Thank you, everybody, for staying with us. As usual, go visit us, fuelcasttv.com. Appreciate you as always. We're out of here.
Risk It for the Brisket.